The Association of American Medical Colleges is pleased to welcome you to today's webinar on optimal strategies for your residency application with a focus on psychiatry for applicants and advisors. We are recording and will make the archive available after. We'll email you once we post it. We did mute all participant audio. If you need help, send us a message. The presentation includes time for Q&A. You may submit a question at any time by clicking the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. It's now my pleasure to welcome Blythe Jonas. Blythe.
Thank you very much, Jennifer, and thank you to all of us for joining today for our session about applying to psychiatry residencies. We're so excited to be joined by some great experts in the field who are going to share their wisdom with prospective applicants in psychiatry. And we've got a lot of great information to share with you. So with that, let me set the stage. This is our agenda for today. We're going to cover a little bit of an overview of ARIS, some nod to some upcoming changes and updates, as well as some data highlights. From there, we will provide the perspective of a student affairs advisor. Then we will have our program director perspective, and then lots of time at the end for questions. Now, I do want to say there are many of you and few of us, so we know there are a lot of questions. We got a lot that were pre-submitted when everybody registered for the webinar today. We may not be able to answer every single question that you all have as a part of this webinar, but we are going to do our best to get through all of them. If you do have a question, the best way to bring it to our attention is to use the question and answer box, and we will be flagging questions and holding them for the end for that question and answer session, as well as a lot of your questions may be answered during the planned presentation part of this presentation today. So with that, let's go ahead and dig in. So first, I wanted to take a moment to just provide a little bit of background about the AAMC and everything that is involved with this organization supporting medical education. So the AAMC was founded in 1876 as a nonprofit association that's created to lead and serve the academic medicine community. Our mission is to improve the health of people everywhere, and that's why the association supports over 450,000 members of the community, from medical students and applicants to program leadership, deans, and DIOs. Here are some of the major ways that the AAMC and ARIS are supporting the transition to residency community. We have a lot of resources that are available for applicants, programs, and advisors to provide information throughout all of the processes involved with the transition to residency. So there are resources such as Careers in Medicine, the Dean's Workstation data, the Resident Readiness Survey, which collects information about residents, the specialty outreach, such as webinars like this. And then we have our Residency Explorer tool, which we've got some great new updates to talk about today. I want to take a moment to highlight one exceptional tool that is offered by the AAMC, which is the Residency Explorer tool. The Residency Explorer tool continues to be a highly utilized tool for applicants and advisors to compare program offerings and to assess competitiveness in order to form program lists for applying to residency. The AAMC's Admissions and Selection Research and Development team is continuously innovating this tool based on research and community feedback. Based on the feedback we have received from the community, Residency Explorer tool has expanded their data this year, including increased specialty coverage from 25 to 40 plus specialties to provide broader insights across more fields, integration of National Board of Medical Examiners data, board score data from both the NBME and the NBOME, including program level Step 2 CK and Level 2 CE score ranges for applicants invited to interview. Additionally, more detailed information is available from the NRMP program position data showing total positions offered and filled by all residency position types. And there will be an additional update coming in August 2025, providing enhanced program-specific details, including application process information, including the application and match service that is used, interview format, interview eligibility requirements, and updated license exam requirements. I cannot stress enough what a valuable tool this is for applicants as you prepare to apply. So we highly encourage everybody, if you haven't yet, to please log on and check out this tool. It's full of source verified data, and there is no cost to applicants or advisors to use this tool. I wanted to take a note while everybody is here to talk about two brief changes that are occurring within the ARIS application for the 2026 season. The first is that Other is a new option that has been added under postgraduate education for any applicants who are filling out the application who may have completed non-ACGME accredited residency education prior to filling out the application. If you're not sure what this means, it probably doesn't apply to you. This mostly applies to international medical graduates who may be applying to fellowship or who have residency training prior to applying to residency in the United States. Additionally, there has been an edit made to the extensions and interruptions section. It has been renamed to interruptions or extensions, and what was in past seasons, one question has been expanded to two questions. There is one question focusing on academic extensions or interruptions, which pertains to remediated or repeated coursework, and another question about professionalism sanctions or any other adverse actions. The language in this section is designed to mirror some similar questions on the MSPE, so please be in touch with your advisors if you have any questions about filling out this section. Now I wanted to move into some data about program signals and interview rates for psychiatry to set the stage for some of the topics that we'll be covering later in this presentation. The following is a sample of interview rates and program signal status by applicant type. And you can see here the chances, this graph indicates the chances of being invited to an interview for different applicant types who sent a signal versus those who did not send a signal. As you can see across all applicant types, sending a signal in psychiatry increases your chance of receiving an interview by that program. Additionally, geographic preferences are an element of the application that is available to you to express interest to a program. And if you're curious about how these different application elements overlap and affect your chance of receiving an interview invitation, this graph has some information about how that works. So each of these bar graphs represents the intersection of whether or not an applicant sent a signal or did not send a signal, and additionally, whether their geographic preferences were aligned with the program where they sent the signal, or those geographic preferences were not aligned. And as you can see, the highest chance of receiving an interview invitation is when a program signal is sent, and additionally, your geographic preferences are aligned with that program. If you would like any more information about this data or any other of our statistics or preliminary data, you can use the QR codes on this slide. Additionally, the QR code on the left is going to take you to a page that's providing resources to help you through the ARIS 2026 season. And that's the end of my introductory portion. And with that, I am going to hand the presentation over to Dr. Lindsay Pershern, who is an associate professor of psychiatry and the assistant dean of student affairs at the Baylor College of Medicine in Houston, Texas. Thank you, Dr. Pershern, for joining us.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. Well, I'm really excited to be here to provide some of my my expertise in this exciting process of applying to psychiatric residencies. So as Blythe mentioned, I am a current student affairs. I'm in the Office of Student Affairs, but I'm also am going to be speaking to you as Dr. Thomas is from the experience of being a program director. And I will say that I'm very honored to be invited and to be presenting with my long-term colleague and friend, Leah Thomas. So I'll start, you can move to the next slide, Blythe. I'll start with a disclaimer. So what maybe you guys have heard from your advisors, you will hear from Dr. Thomas and I, which is that we're going to be talking about advice in the whole, but it is true from our experience that not all programs and all program directors approach this process in the same way. So our hope is that our advice from not only being in that position and knowing a lot of program directors and having national connections to a lot of programs, but also our experience of advising students who successfully match into psychiatry over the last, 15 plus years, we do have an idea of best practice, but you may hear different advice. So some of the things that we may share, you might see in resources or from talking with your institutional advisors or student affairs deans, you may hear different advice, and that's okay. It's because there's not universal advice that is going to be applicable to everybody. But our hope is that we can synthesize that to give you some general guidance, but also as you ask Q&A and as you get advice from other people, hopefully that synthesizes to a general sense of what you should do. The other piece you may be getting advice from is students, fellow students, maybe who are applying into psychiatry right now, or students who have applied in the past. I would give you a little bit of caution. Talking to your peers is a great thing, but often their advice can be clouded by individual factors, but also hindsight bias. So I would just give you a word of caution. And then we really like, and I want to thank AAMC, especially for the revised version of the Residency Explorer, because I think data and having data that you then can synthesize and apply to your own application is really one of the unique and special features of guiding you to your application process. Okay, so before you start, and you're probably doing this right now, it is important to know what the application looks like, the different components, the pieces of the application, and then thinking about what you want to put in those different sections of the application. So it's important to do that before. And when you think about reflection and synthesis, you want to think first about your experiences, what's in your CV, organizing that information in a way that then you can translate into the pieces of the application, making sure that it's up to date. So if you haven't been keeping an updated list of your experiences and activities, do that and look at it in terms of what have I been doing? How can I describe those experiences? It's also a CV. So a CV packaged in a traditional CV format, which not all CVs are the same. So a summarized document with a timeline and with credentials is also going to be something that your letter writers often want. So you can multi-purpose this activity by also updating and organizing your curriculum vitae. You do want to spend a lot of time before you start to write or put things into your application reflecting. And what you want to think about is what experiences you've had that inform your journey to this point, your interest in psychiatry for sure, and then what you think you want to do. Program directors are not going to need you or want you to have a clear vision. You can, that's great, but there's a lot that changes from the residency application phase to your experiences in residency. So don't feel like you need to have a 5-10-year plan, but you do want to think about what experiences you want to have to help you get there, and also the things that you're looking for in a program. So what are the things that your interests and your experiences inform that are important to you in a program? We'll talk about that in a second in terms of picking the programs to apply to. As you're organizing those thoughts, you do want to think about the parts of your CV that, and I'll address one of these questions from the Q&A already, which is a common question of what if I've done a lot of things that aren't psychiatry specific because I didn't know I wanted to do psychiatry and maybe until recently. Being late to psychiatry does not hurt you. And in many ways, being able to talk about how maybe an initial interest in OB-GYN and a lot of activity in OB-GYN, then your experiences that really informed you that you want to do psychiatry and maybe also still want to work with women and promote the health of women. That is a narrative that is common, which is why I use the example, but also encouraged. So Psychiatry program directors are, what's true when we look at the data, the number of people who matriculating into medical school say they want to do psychiatry, and those that go into psychiatry, that's a big, you can't see my hands, but that's actually quite a big difference. So often students come in not knowing of their interest in psychiatry, and then when they apply, they develop that interest. So it's not going to hurt you, but you do need to think about how your experiences, or maybe psychiatry adjacent experiences, you can highlight and promote. And you are going to want to, in your application, make it clear to program directors that you are interested in psychiatry, and you do that by explaining and linking your experiences to your current interests. And your personal statement we'll talk about in a second. You're going to want to think about your clinical experiences and your preclinical experiences and how those have influenced you. And you do want to think also about and get feedback from people about your strengths and what they can bring to psychiatry. Next slide. Thanks. So from thinking about your application to starting to input that information, it is really helpful, if you haven't already, to look at ARIS. And there is an ARIS applicant worksheet template that can be very helpful for you starting to know what's asked and how to input it. You want to think about your experiences and what to include in the meaningful experiences. So you will have to pick 10. I know that will be challenging for a lot of you. In terms of prioritizing what to include and how to talk about those 10 experiences, you want to think about the things that you've done recently and the things that are more longitudinal. I'll give a highlight here that it is not universal that you can only include experiences that you've done in medical school. So if you think about including things that you've done that started before medical school, you do want to be able to highlight the longitudinality of those experiences and how they impacted you. You do want to think about things that reflect who you are, including your core values and your interests that, again, you want to highlight, especially as you talk about the things that you're interested in and the programs that align with those interests and values. You do want to kind of think about what we talk about as kind of across the spectrum of experiences, and you'll be able to see in the ARIS applicant worksheet and also in ARIS that you're going to be labeling your experiences, and you want to have breadth of the 10 things amongst scholarship, leadership, education and mentorship, service. So you do want those 10 things should not all be in one of those buckets, but instead kind of show the program directors a breadth of your commitment in leadership, scholarship, education, and thank you, Erin, for the link, and service. I'll highlight here that anything you include in your application, whether it be in the meaningful experiences within your MSPE, if you are asked by your student affairs team to highlight your noteworthy characteristics, and then in your personal statement, those are the 3 sections I tell applicants are kind of the prime real estate where your voice and your narrative are included. Anything that you put in those sections, number one, you need to be comfortable talking about. So, and I'll add to that the impactful experiences section. You really should not be including anything in your application that you don't want people to know or to be asked about. Anything in your application is fair game for a conversation. So if there are things that are important to you, but you feel are sensitive issues or that might be triggering or difficult for you to talk about, don't include it. And that's not going to hurt you. And in the flip side, if there are meaningful or adverse experiences that you think contribute to who you are, you do want to include those as long as you feel comfortable engaging in conversation around those topics. You do want to think about the things that you've done that are related to psychiatry, but you can include things that aren't and be able to talk about how they built your interest in psychiatry or built your skills and your contributions in the areas I mentioned in service, leadership, scholarship, and teaching or mentorship. And you do want to include things that you're going to be able to light up and show your passion and your compassion as you talk about it. So I would encourage you to draft a list of the 10 as a tentative. Don't hesitate to reach out and review that list with your specialty specific advisors or mentors or student affairs deans. And then the application will ask that you choose the 3 most meaningful. You'll want to have a conversation or think about why that was meaningful to you and how it demonstrates those personal characteristics and values that you think align with psychiatry and maybe specific programs. Next slide, please. Okay, I've alluded to the personal statement. and the importance of the personal statement. I have a few pieces of advice in terms of, and this may be things you've heard from other people at your institution or advisors, but remember the purpose of the personal statement. The purpose really is what program directors want to see is you on paper being translated to you as a human. So the strategies of the personal statement are really to be able to highlight your uniqueness, talk with your narrative voice about your experiences, and being able to answer the questions of who you are as an individual and as a human being, why you chose psychiatry or why you're pursuing psychiatry, what you think your interests and goals are going to be, and then that be translating to what you think you want or need from a residency program. This should not just be a repeat of your CV. So you have, again, remember, this is prime real estate. You have already talked about, in many ways, listed the things that you've done. Now you want to talk about how those things you have done contribute to your interest and who you are and illustrate your humanity. You do want your personal statement to integrate with the sections, again, these prime real estate sections, the noteworthy characteristics in your MSPE, and the meaningful experiences and the narratives that you're able to attach to those top three. A strategy piece is, remember that if you do have, you have the ability to write separate personal statements that then you can attach, whether it is that you're applying to multiple specialties. And Dr. Thomas and I may be able to kind of address the reasons why that may be a pathway for people. We'll talk about tracks in a second, but if you are applying to different tracks, you may want to craft different personal statements for the different tracks. You may want to develop specific personal statements for specific programs. So that can sometimes be a strategy to talk about maybe specific aspects of a program that you want. Let's say eating disorder interest is something you're interested in. There are some programs that have really robust eating disorder experiences in their program. So if you're really wanting to have eating disorder experiences, you could write a personal statement that you send to those programs that have clearly, which you can see on their website, eating disorder experiences. But it might be that if you're using that same personal statement for programs that don't have eating disorder experiences, those programs may worry that you're not going to get what you want at their program. So that's an example of a strategy of where a program-specific personal statement might be helpful. Okay, next slide. Okay, I want to address some of the questions, and I think some of this was in the Q&A already about letters of recommendation. So who should write your letters of recommendation? The key thing here is that you should get letters from people who know you, who have worked with you clinically if possible, and who you trust. So if you're not sure if someone's going to be able to write you a strong letter of recommendation, whether you just had a brief experience with them, or maybe you were working on a team with an attending that wasn't really present, you more worked with a fellow or a resident, I'm not sure if you're going to feel comfortable. You need to feel comfortable knowing what they're going to write. The strategy we recommend, and I would imagine many of you have heard this, is you can ask your letter writers or potential letter writers, will you be able to write me a strong letter of recommendation and within the time frame I have for you? And that question allows them to say no. Because if they don't feel like they have time to write the letter, or they don't feel like they've had the experience with you to be able to write a strong letter, or if maybe they don't feel you didn't perform as well on that rotation, they don't feel like they could support your application with a strong letter, that gives them an out to say no. You do not have to have all of your letters from psychiatrists. I would recommend, at least, you definitely need one, but 2 to 3. And then absolutely you can get letters of recommendations from people in other specialties, especially if they gave you very good feedback, or even more beautifully, if they really say, I really wish they would have chosen internal medicine. But thankfully, there'll be a psychiatrist who knows and can perform medicine really well. For those of you who are coming from international medical schools, it is going to be important not only for you to have clinical experiences in the US to be a strong candidate and a candidate of interest for most programs, but you would want to get a letter from someone you worked with in a US clinical experience. So it's okay to get letters from your home medical school in your home country, but most programs, and some may be really explicit about this on their website, to interview and entertain an application from someone outside the US, they typically would like to see that you've had clinical experiences in the US. And I say that knowing that there are a lot of barriers to that. It's okay to get letters of recommendation from people you didn't work with clinically, but the hope would be that they have some perspective on your clinical skills, which program directors are going to want to see. There's always a question every year, and Dr. Thomas and I see it on our listservs about chair letters. It is rare for psychiatry programs to want letters from your chair of your department, or what you can see in other specialties, which are department letters. So in most cases, these are individualized letters of recommendation. The question of should I get a letter of recommendation from an away rotation is a little bit complicated. You can, for sure, if you do well and you feel like that person at an away rotation is going to write you a strong letter, that's absolutely fine and encouraged. What needs to be in the letter of recommendation? Again, you want to approach this with sharing your CV and your personal statement with your letter writer. We encourage you to waive your right to see that letter. You can make a decision about if you would like to ask that letter writer to write you a traditional letter of recommendation or a standardized letter of recommendation. Standardized letters of recommendation are not required in psychiatry, but many program directors would like to see those, and you can see on their website if they say you need to, or we strongly encourage you to submit a standardized letter. In these slides, and maybe I can put it in the link in a bit, you'll see the template. On AAMC, so the Association for Directors of Medical Student Education and Psychiatry, developed the SLOR and also has a lot of faculty resources to help your letter writers. The purpose of the SLOR is to decrease bias, and this was a question in the QA, to really target the information that program directors really want to see in letters of recommendation. So you guys can make that decision for yourself. And if you have letter writers who don't feel comfortable writing a SLOR, don't fret. But there's a lot of resources for them. Remember that the people that write your letters often will know people within the program. Medicine is, as hard as it's to believe, a small world. So remember that you may have proximity to, and program directors might really be encouraged to see letters from people that they're networked with. Also, you may want to approach the request with reminding them about something you did while you rotated with them and giving them some personal things they can include and specific things they can include in the letter. The last thing I'll say about letters is that you do need to give them a deadline that's reasonable. And our encouragement is to give them at least 2 weeks before the ARIS open date, which is September 24th. So in that case, I would say September 10th is the deadline you would give them. That'll ease your anxiety of, is it going to get in time, and give the system time to process it, especially if it's submitted toward the end of the window. All right, next slide. All right, so we've thought about the different application components and strategies in those. Now, I will highlight and really praise the new version of the Residency Explorer as a resource, and along with the Careers in Medicine section, including your specialty or preference exercise. But you do want to use resources to start to think about which programs do I want to apply to, which is also a fun experience of deciding which programs you're really interested in. So you want to think about, through these tools, where you're going to be competitive for. So thinking about which programs do the applicants who have matched in that place, do they look like me? Next slide, Blythe. I think the next slide has some good also tools of assessing this. So you do want to look at program websites. You do want to look at the match trends, and we have at the end of my section some resources for you on that. If there are alumni in that program from your school, they are an extremely helpful proxy to get a sense of not only is this going to be a good fit for me, but also a way to understand the program from an inside perspective. You'll want to draft a tentative list and get input from your mentors, your career advisors, and maybe again, your peers or people in the student affairs. And I'll talk about next, but you'll want to consider then how to use your program signals. So program signals are a useful way for you to indicate to programs that you would like an interview at that program. So you'll want to be thinking about, while you're making your list, kind of prioritizing where you want to signal. And then again, there's a lot of great information within Residency Explorer, not only about your candidacy and your stats and do they match up with the people who have matched there over the last few years, but Residency Explorer will also help you think about, should I program signal or not, and how many people that program signaled were invited to this program. All right, next slide. So program signals give you the ability to express interest for an interview. That is the guidance that programs have. They should be thinking about with program signals that is an expression of that you'd like an interview. They're encouraged not to think about program signals when they make their rank list. That should be based on their experience of you in the interview process. You will have 10 signals, and they're used as a data point, and Dr. Thomas will talk about this in a second, but in terms of looking at your whole package and your use of the program signal. A program signal is given to an institution or a program, not an individual track. And we'll look on the next slide at what it looks like if you do have tracks. Okay, next slide. So when you think about the factors to consider, you want to think about aspects, and I know Dr. Thomas is going to talk about community-based programs versus university-based programs. There's a lot of information in Residency Explorer even that you can compare when you make a profile. What are the things that you're looking for, and how do the programs compare to each other in terms of aligning with your interests? Do you want a large program or a small program? Do you want to have certain types of benefits or access to childcare? There's a lot of information in there that's extremely helpful. And it may not be stuff you know right now, but this is the process of starting to get a sense of where is the program, what are the components of the program in terms of size and curriculum and number of rotations and affiliations, and how many places do I work, what kind of funding structure do they have? Are they mostly private, insurance-based practice, or will I get exposure to safety net hospitals? You'll want to look at the residents and the faculty and see what types of things they're doing, if they have a lot of subspecialization or if there's a lot of general psychiatry. We'll talk about in a second those that are interested in child psychiatry and having good exposure in, if you're not going to end up in a child track, having good exposure to a breadth of child psychiatry to enhance your ability to matching if you want to fast track or go into child psychiatry after your 4th year. You are going to want to look at aspects of resident life and wellness and social support, and then benefits. In terms of tracks, I'll ask Blythe to go to the next slide. This is what it would look like in ARIS, or what it does look like. You can apply to a general program. In this case, this is the main medical center. You see the categorical psychiatry program. You see that they have a combined child track. What that means is that you can match into a position where you would do 3 years at the main medical center of your adult psychiatry and transition right into a child psychiatry fellowship. So it's a 5-year program. So you match into both in your first wave of ARIS. That's opposed to applying to child psychiatry while you're in a general psychiatry program, and therefore you're doing fellowship. You might get a fellowship spot at Maine Medical Center, but you might get fellowship spots elsewhere. And then in this case, Maine also has a rural track. So in this case, they have three different tracks you can apply to. You can apply to all 3. And often the programs will, if you interview for one, also tell you that you've interviewed, and they will rank you on a categorical track if, let's say, you applied to the rural track as well. Next slide. That shouldn't be a mystery to you, so you can ask the programs about that. This may feel way off. It's not. By October or November, you're going to be thinking about preparing for interviews. So I would strongly, as we more relevant in a few months, but once you start getting interview invitations, I think the core thing to take away is that you need to prepare. Again, the link to what you include your application is that you need to be ready to talk about anything you include in your application, and talk about it in an authentic and experienced way. Don't put something in 10 meaningful experiences if you can't talk about it. Be ready to talk about your experience and what you got out of it. There are lots of resources, both through AAMC and probably your institutions, to prepare for interviews. And we'd strongly encourage you to do practice interviews and mock interviews. Even if they don't offer at your institution, have that proxy with mentors and or people who have interviewed before. Practice is really important. All right, next slide. So for those of you who are on the webinar who are in this position of advising, I think the key thing is to be prepared to support your student applicants as much as possible, to have the worksheet, to share the worksheet. I'm going to talk about in a second the roadmap to psychiatric residency. That's a really useful tool that you can share with the applicants as well. The Residency Explorer I've talked about. I haven't mentioned the Texas STAR. The Texas STAR preceded, I think, the current different version of Residency Explorer, but is a self-reported resource that has a lot of statistics around step scores and number of research activities. So it gives you that kind of proxy to, is this an applicant that looks similar to people who have matched in this program in the past? We'll also show you the match statistics from the NRMP that are helpful with that right sizing. You do want to meet with students. You do want to offer your support throughout the application and interview recruitment season. You can see what ARIS looks like. That's super helpful. You can create an account for yourself and review the application, especially with some of the changes that Blythe mentioned that might be helpful. Stay in contact with your students. They might not reach out to you in October or November to say, I only have 2 interviews, but proactively reaching out to them and thinking about the strategies to help them if they don't have the number of interviews that you think would be helpful, important for them at that level of, at that stage of the cycle. And then keeping track of that, I think, is a useful way to advocate. Don't wait for them. Be proactive and reach out to these students who have they're juggling a lot of things. All right, I'll go to the next slide and then hand it off. But there's a lot of really wonderful, and thanks to Dr. Thomas and to others, a lot of collaboration between the AAMC, ARIS, the Psychiatry Residency Directors Training Organization, ADPERT, APA, and PsychSign, and then AAMC, the Medical Student Education Organization. So use data, use resources. One thing I'll highlight that I think Dr. Thomas is going to talk about too is the ADPERT organization has open houses. Most of them are in August, so you can sign up now for those. PsychSign has a lot of resources, and then the residency roadmap I think is helpful. As I pass off to Dr. Thomas, the other thing that I will say, I'm sure she will reinforce, is take care of yourselves during this time. I know it feels overwhelming and stressful, but you're not alone. There are a lot of people around to help you, and you need to be, sleeping and eating and all of those Maslow's basic needs to take care of yourselves during this time. All right, I'll hand it off to Leah.
Hello all, and thank you, Dr. Prashern, Dr. Lindsay. Lindsay and I have known each other for a very long time. I don't want to say how long for both of our sakes, but we both have lived in both the program director world and the student advising world. And I begin with that to actually say to those listening to this call, sometimes there's a lot of anxiety and fear of like, the program director is this. The program director is a human being. I actually work as an associate program director, but I'm also the lead faculty advisor for my medical students here at UT Southwestern. So I think it's important to remember that people have dual roles, multiple relationships, and are really all here to support you and get you going in this process. As I mentioned before, I'm an associate program director at a specific institution in Dallas, Texas. I also serve as the ADPERT, which is the Residency Training Directors Group. I serve as the chair of their recruitment committee. And so how I'm going to speak to you today is from a very global perspective of here is the gestalt of psychiatry program directors. As my colleague, Dr. Prashern, mentioned, that's not going to speak for like every program director is going to do it this way, but I want you to hear that and know that this is sort of the global thought processes, global kind of ways to think about this as well. And I gesture with my hands a lot, so grace and patience there. Next slide, please. One of the things I want to also say to folks is there is more than one way to be a psychiatrist. I mentioned I'm an associate program director. I do a lot of cognitive behavioral therapy and I take care of veterans. One of my other associate program director colleagues is an addiction psychiatrist. And another one of my associate program director colleagues is an interventional psychiatrist doing ECT and TMS work. There are many ways to take care of patients, many, many ways to be a psychiatrist. So I encourage you as you go along this journey. I want you to reflect on your own values. What is your mission? Why did you choose medical school? And speak more about why you're choosing psychiatry. I want you also to be reflecting on how can you grow in this program and how can you contribute to this program. You are not going to enter a program where you're an N of 1 for most specialties. Some of the combined training programs, I'm going to asterisk there. But for those folks thinking about a categorical program, you may be with 6 or 9 or 12 or 20 something other residents. What are you going to contribute to the community? How are you going to help this program grow? How are you going to leave the place a little better than you left it? Is something I want you to be thinking about as well. Next slide, please. And again, as I said before, lots of different psychiatry programs, lots of different places. 76% of our programs are academic, either university or community-based. 24% are community-based, meaning hospital-based. They will still offer teaching and opportunities there. All of us have to follow the ACGME requirements for education, training. There are minimum requirements and maximum requirements for training that all programs have to follow. So I think that's really important. Every program has to give you the base learning, what you're thinking about, or what are those little additions, add-ons? Is there individual learning plans? Do they do an eating disorders research? Do they offer you a research track, potential for child and adolescent psychiatry, opportunities like that to be thinking about from there? Also important to remember for our DO colleagues, the MD-DO residencies are now combined. So it's not that you're looking for a DO residency or an MD residency. Both programs take both. There's often sometimes a lot of anxiety from both DO students as well as international graduates about like, is this program DO friendly? Is this program IMG friendly? I encourage you to do some research on that. That would be looking at the program's list and like past residents. Have they taken DO medical students in the past? Have they taken international graduates in the past? That's a kind of way of helping with like past behavior as future predictors. But again, there are a lot of open fairs coming up, virtual open houses. I think it's worth asking those questions there as well. Next slide, please. And again, a little more information on our programs. This is again data from the ARS and NRMP about the number of psychiatry programs. This has grown over time. In many, many years, there were like 200 programs, a wonderful explosion of them. So again, as you've heard Dr. Prashern speak of, we've got psychiatry, med psychiatry, psychiatry family medicine, psychiatry neurology, triple board, which is pediatric psychiatry, child psychiatry. And there are also tracks within a program, the child combined track, research tracks, rural tracks, community public health, physician scientist, which offers kind of a PhD, and then some other tracks such as addiction and geriatric, but more commonly are known for fellowships. I saw a question in the chat where someone asked, I think I'm interested in child psychiatry, but I'm not sure if I want to do it. I think the thing to remember is that for those child combined programs, what you're doing is you're skipping the match. So you are entering a child psychiatry program, a general psychiatry program, but you're actually going to also match into their child psychiatry fellowship. Those are for folks, I encourage folks, and programs often say, if you really think that's what you want to do, if you know at the beginning of your process, I want to be a child psychiatrist, then definitely think about those combined program tracks. If you're sitting there and you're not really sure, I would say maybe apply for look at programs that have really good child psychiatry fellowships. That was kind of the advice, and then sort of compare and contrast. For many programs, of course, if you are interviewing in a specialty track, many programs will often say you're opting in to the general program as well, and so you can rank both of those and kind of decide from there. Next slide, please. And so again, this is just another data in terms of like how many positions are offered. They're about 2380 in psychiatry. There are 5 psych neuro positions. So they're again thinking about numbers and what you need to think about. Again, I'm just going to reiterate for some programs, especially sort of psych neuro, psych family, triple board, IM psych. Those are very small numbers. It is understood by programs that you may also be applying to the categorical psychiatry program or the categorical medicine program or the categorical neurology program or categorical peds, for example. It's often understood because from just a numbers and matching standpoint, there aren't enough of the triple board spots, for example, to then say that I can only apply triple board programs and only match in that. So we understand that as program directors, and we will actually, be talking and asking of like, how would you like to be supported? How can we help you? But oftentimes people are thinking about the CAP track as well as the triple board. And so we'll kind of support people as they make those decisions and conversations from there. Next slide, please. I've seen a lot of questions in the chat about like, which element is the most important? Is it my step score? Is it my application? Is it this? The answer is yes. All of them are important. As a field, psychiatry really believes in what is called holistic review. And so this is mission driven. You heard me talk about that at the beginning of my section. What is your mission? What are your values? That is what we are also looking at in our programs. What do we want to do? What kind of psychiatrist do I want to grow out of this program? What do I, as a psychiatry program director, want to make sure that my residents do when they graduate? How do I support them in that? And so when we think about this holistic review, it's looking at both experiences, attributes, and academic metrics. So as you heard Dr. Prashern talk about, thinking about your experiences, thinking about your academics, thinking about your research, your scholarship, your mentorship, your education, it is all meant to be a whole picture of folks. I actually during my faculty advising, kind of met with a student today who was like, but what is the one thing I need to do to make my application better? And I was like, there is not one thing. I need you to do many things. And I need you to be like, think about your whole story and bring your whole self into this experience. And so I encourage you to do that. There are, like I said before, there are many pathways. There are some people who knew immediately I was going to be a psychiatrist, and there are people who found their love of psychiatry on the journey. Tell me that story. Program directors love that story. We're psychiatrists. We love a good story. So tell us how you came to this journey and share with us how you got to this place of loving psychiatry. This is a sidebar I'm going to just say in my head. Which is sometimes program directors will see applications where people are almost apologizing for like, I'm not doing medicine because of this. I'm not doing surgery because of this. You don't have to apologize. I didn't do those specialties either. I want to hear why you're going to be a psychiatrist, and we can talk about how much we both love that. So I encourage that as you think about filling out your applications. Next slide, please. So here are things I'm going to recommend for applicants in this process. And again, I'm sort of thinking about this before, during, and kind of after the season. So again, and some of this is going to mirror the information that Dr. Prashern has said, because again, it's the same process. It's just the one side of the coin is flipped. And I really want you to hear that, like, again, program directors, we want you to be at the best place possible. You are interviewing us as much as we're interviewing you in this process. I want all my applicants to match and be successful. I think I'm excited for more psychiatrists. We need more psychiatrists in our country. So again, I encourage you, as Dr. Prashern said, I need you to do your research. Have you looked at Residency Explorer? Have you looked at program websites? Are you checking for programs for precedent in sort of areas? Attending some virtual fairs to learn more. There may be people, we're speaking a lot to folks who are about to apply for residency, but if you are an earlier applicant in the process, so if you're an MS1, MS2 on this call, the American Psychiatric Association for the last several years at their annual meeting has had an in-person fair at the APA. So if you are an earlier applicant and interested in that, you could attend APA. And see programs in person. So that's an opportunity there. As I said before, ADPERT and Psych Sign often have lists of programs. The other thing I really recommend is getting your application in on time. Program directors as a whole, as soon as ERIS opens, we are all in there scouring applications. So everything that is in your control needs to be in the system before September 24th. We will give grace and patience for letters of recommendation. Don't make them super late because we do need to see them. And so gently and politely nudge those letter writers. But everything that was in your student control, so that means your personal statement, your ERIS application, all of those things, anything in your control needs to be in there before September 24th, 2025, when ERIS opens. So please, I encourage you to do that. The other thing I would say is make sure your application is, all the elements are up and correct. Sometimes I've seen applicants where the photo is missing or things like that, and it's sort of a little like program directors feel is off-putting. So just again, anything in your control, refresh the page, do all that. It's important. Next slide, please. During interview season, so you have gotten your interviews and you're going to do this, and it's great. I really want you to enjoy your interview days. I said, you're going to be a psychiatrist. This is awesome. You're going to talk to all of us. It's going to be great. And I want you to enjoy that and like breathe and do it. So I want you to practice your interviews, but I don't want you to over practice where you feel like it is so rehearsed that you're just ready to answer every question. So finding that balance for yourself is really important. It's also really important to remember that this is a job interview. This is maybe a shift for many of you in your thinking. So much of the time you're applying to go to more school. But residency is this unique hybrid where you are both an employee and a student. And so it's important for some of you, for many students now, especially as we think about graduate medical education and just the process of getting from high school to med school and sort of the rigor of it. For many of you, this may be your first job. And so remembering that this is a job interview. And as it's a job interview, everyone you're meeting is likely evaluating you in some way, shape, or form. So thinking about your interactions with faculty, residents, administrative staff, they all may be interacting and asking you questions. And so how do you comport yourself in a professional manner during a job interview is really important. I encourage you to RSVP to interviews in a timely fashion. ADPERT has come out with program director guidelines. And so we actually do have a window of time in which we encourage applicants to please turn in their applications. But please RSVP to applications. And we're giving people a big window because we understand it can feel really anxiety provoking. I also encourage you to cancel interviews in a timely fashion. We know that there are more people applying to psychiatry than we have the space and bandwidth for. And it does make the interview season anxiety provoking. So if you have gotten enough interviews, we often recommend, if you've gotten 10 interviews, it may be time to cancel some of the other ones. If you knew you weren't as interested in that program, you can do that in a timely fashion, and that may open up a spot for a colleague of yours who would really like to interview there as well. And I think, and again, we're also at limited resource. Many programs have a limited number of dates and times, maybe running a wait list. And so being able to offer that spot to the next person on their wait list would be gracious of you as a process from there. And I'm going to end with giving yourself grace as well. Your future plans can evolve, and interviews may take you in very different places. I distinctly remember thinking of very one path when I was on the interview trail, and then very much a different one. And so I really encourage you to think about that. It's why it's why Dr. Prashern said, it's why we encourage both program directors and applicants to only use signals at that early part of the process and not at the end part of the process. Your thought process may have changed, and maybe the place you sent a signal to and got an interview at may not be the place that you got a place that you didn't send a signal to, you sent a geographic preference to, and they gave you an interview as well. And you find yourself at the end of the process being like, I really liked that place. It's where I fit. To use the vernacular, it's the one that passed the vibe check. Go make that one happen. So please go with that and think about that process as you change through. Next slides, please. So again, thinking about this is kind of the thoughts after interview. I'm going to begin with actually the second half of the slide before the first part. When you're thinking about making your rank list, which I know feels very far away, but the time will pass quickly. I want you to be honest and about yourself as you rewind about your interview day. Maybe taking some notes after each interview day may help you sort of what that moment is like. It's very important that you make your list based on your preferences, not how you think the program will rank you. The programs will make their rank list. You as an applicant will make your rank list, and then the NRMP will do its magic and make it happen. If you look at the videos for the NRMP, it is heavily weighted in the applicant's favor. So I just want you to make a list based on what you think is going to happen, not what you think me as a program director is thinking at the time of it. It can be very anxiety provoking. It's anxiety provoking for us as program leadership as we wait for match day as well too. So again, make the list based on your feelings about the process. I want you to respect program directors' wishes and communications. So thank you notes are acceptable, but when in doubt, always ask what is the appropriate communications and conversations there. Should you send something after? A word about love letters and you're my top choice. Program directors do read those. Some program directors will be very clear that say, oh, don't send me anything of that nature. Please look on websites. Please make sure you have that information. The other thing I will say is if you're going to be clear about it, program directors are humans. And if you say you're one of my top choices, that doesn't mean you're my number one, and program directors read that a certain way. I will also say that send it to one place. It can help, but it's, again, I think it's just a matter of sort of what you want to do. I encourage you to just think about whose anxiety you're trying to manage in that moment as you debate whether or not you should send those letters. Next slide, please. And so again, we've got some data and resources, and I'm going to stop here and turn it back to Blythe to kind of moderate the rest of our chat. Thank you for letting me have this opportunity, and I wish you all just the best in this interview season or future ones.
Thank you so much, Dr. Thomas and Dr. Prashern, for sharing all of that information. We have a few moments left for some questions, so we're going to pull some out of the ones that were pre-submitted. Those of you who have submitted questions in the Q&A, we have been working through those as well. And a lot of these topics may overlap and answer some of the questions that you have. So hold on just one moment. There's a question about away rotation timing. in the cycle. And we know that away rotations are important, but if for some reason you're unable to complete an away rotation until later in the application season, maybe past that October or November timeframe when interviews are happening, is that still a worthwhile thing to do?
Sure. So I didn't say this earlier. I think I did. Maybe I did. You do not have to do an away rotation to be competitive for psychiatry. Not everybody can get them. So, and program directors know that. So don't stress about it. Because of that, they are truly a way for you, as Dr. Thomas mentioned, to kind of audition a program. So one thing I'll say about aways, if you do an away rotation, you need to do well. So if you're doing an away somewhere you want to go, plan to work hard, plan to get there early, plan to stay late, like really do your best. If you don't, your candidacy at that place probably will be hurt. And then if you're doing an away or get offered an away after, like let's say rank lists are due, it's truly a way for you to get a sense of, is this a place that I want to be? So until later in the application. So yes, the other thing it can give you an opportunity to do is to connect with the people in that program. And let's say it's after interviews or during interviews. If you didn't get an interview, you certainly can ask to meet with people and strongly voice your interest in the program. And then if it's between interviews and you've been interviewed and the rank list, then you can also see that as a way to decide where that place should end up on your list. I hope that's helpful.
Thank you so much. Moving on, we have a question about research as it pertains to applications, and this came up in the Q&A a little bit too. There was a question somewhat related to this about, somebody who had maybe come from a different career with research that wasn't necessarily clinical or basic in nature, but still had published a decent amount in the humanities. Can you speak to how research is perceived and maybe how it should be communicated via the application for applicants?
Sure. I think there's kind of two approaches to think about this when you think about from the program director's perspective. Remember, there are what's called research tracks, and the applicants that programs are looking for in those tracks are people who are looking to have a clinical scientist research career. People who are looking for like an 80% research, 20% career, 20% clinical career. Those are folks that almost the expectation is, have you been doing research in medical school or prior to it? Is your plan for your future to continue in some type of research? Are you looking for that research mentor, et cetera, that process from there? So that is speaking to the research track. And again, people are maybe doing an MD, PhD program. They're doing the research that they have the opportunity to do at their institution. So maybe it's basic, maybe it's translational. Doing the research on, this is the research I want to do in psychiatry. Does the research track, does the department have the mentors that I'm looking for, is really important. For folks not planning a research track career, research for most program directors shows that you can take a project from idea to completion, that you know how to work collaboratively, that you know how to do kind of this work and mentoring and experiences and process there. So it demonstrates you can complete a project, and it demonstrates like, I know how to, write an abstract and do that work. And if you're interested in that kind of education and those opportunities, that is great for programs. So it's really about sort of the perception is really about sort of, are you thinking about a research track, or are you doing research to demonstrate a best practice? So like sort of, here's the work I've done. And again, do research because it is meaningful to you and valuable to you, not because you're trying to check a box for a program to look at.
Thank you so much, Dr. Thomas. I'm going to pull one from the Q&A here since we have a limited amount of time left. So there was a question about if somebody has time between medical school and entering residency, such as a gap year, or if they are a reapplicant, for example, is there anything that they can do with that time to help them stand out or see success when they do apply for residency?
Sorry, I was answering in the Q&A. I think there's lots of things that you can do. I think in some ways, looking across that spectrum of, the key things, I think that we haven't talked about work, but work experiences are highly valuable for a program director. So if you're thinking about, should I include a previous work experience in my 10 meaningful experiences? I would say, yes, you should. A lot of PDs actually see having a work history and seeing non-traditional pathways to medicine is really highly valuable in terms of your ability to work and function within a residency construct. You guys remember, when you're residents, you're both trainees, but you're also employees. So you're working, and your work skills are going to be really highly valuable. Even better if you have work that's in the mental health field. So I think we have seen people who work as mental health techs and have that proximity to the work we do, in addition to cultivating compassion for our patients, that are really meaningful things. If work is not possible, then service. I think in doing research is valuable. Research plus service plus contributing to the place where you are. So I would say across the breadth. And then if you have the ability to do some scholarly stuff, even if it's on the side, but to have, work, I think that people often do ask the question. It's the same when you become, when you're applying for a job, if you see gaps in history, like you had a year off, they're going to ask, what were you doing? So I would say, like, taking a year off and not having anything in your application about that year might hurt you. You want to demonstrate that you use the time well and wisely, and maybe to kind of advance your interest in psychiatry, your knowledge, and your skills.
Thank you so much for that perspective. So we are winding down. We only have 1 more minute. I want to thank everybody for participating today and submitting all your questions. We're very sorry we weren't able to get to all of them, but we're hopeful that all of this information has been incredibly helpful to you all. And we wish you all the best of luck as you go through this process. I did want to take a nod to there are some additional spotlights that are scheduled for those advisors on the call, or anybody who's interested in a secondary specialty or maybe still decided. We do have still scheduled family medicine and general surgery. In addition, we have all of the other ones on this slide that have been recorded and posted. So if you didn't see those live, you can also access those. Again, thank you all for joining, and a special thanks to Drs. Thomas and Persher for sharing your wisdom with our prospective psychiatry applicants. And with that, I will hand it back to Jennifer to close us out. Thank you.
Great, thanks. And please give us your feedback on this session by filling out the evaluation that will pop up on your screen as soon as we close. We did record the session. We'll let you know when it's ready. On behalf of the AAMC, have a great day.